Hello, everyone. This is Ben Dunn, your AP Sensei. Founder of Vanity Press, established in 1985, celebrating our 40th year in publishing, and creator of such comics as Ninja High School and Where You're Not. Now, I am loath to, do anything political, because I don't want to alienate either side, but I have to comment on what I'm observing with Trump in Canada. Now, you know, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of tariffs. I think they're awful, to be honest, but I'm also someone who understands fair play. And if you look at it, Trump is merely trying to level the playing field. I don't know what the nuances are with tariffs about this, that, and the other. There must be a reason why they're implementing tariffs, protectionism, to protect your industry. I get it. I understand that, you know. The thing about it is that, you want it to go both ways. You want it to make it fair on the other side. Now, some people say, man, it's an unfair advantage. The United States is such a bigger country, and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Well, like I said, I don't understand the nuance. But I have noticed and observed that recently, because of Trump's tariffs and his, confrontational, shall we say, attitude toward Canada. And don't get me wrong, I love Canada. I have a lot of friends in Canada. I used to attend Anime North every year until one day they stopped inviting me, which I wondered why, but I get it. I understand. Nothing lasts forever. I do miss going to Anime North, and seeing my Canadian friends, but it is what it is. You know. But regardless of that, I don't have anything against Canada. I love Canada. In fact, I even considered moving there, if I retired. But I think you're being trolled. You know, Trump is, someone you know, is someone you should not underestimate. There's always a reason for why he's doing something. He's not one of those people who just fly off the handle and reacts, emotionally like a lot of people do. There's a calculated deviousness about what he does and his actions. Now, he, because of his actions against Canada, have suddenly made the quote unquote Liberal Party suddenly very popular. Supposedly they were on the outs until Trump's announced the tariffs and stuff. And now all of a sudden the Liberal parties are back in, back to being popular again. Because there was rumors that the Conservative Party was going to take over. Now, Canadian conservatism, that's only slightly, left of the only slightly left than a U.S. Democrat. But the thing is that you're being trolled, Canada. This is just my message, to you Canadians, is that Trump wants this. He's using what I call reverse psychology. By promoting the Liberal candidate, he actually wants things to get worse for Canada. He knows that there's going to be a gut reaction, to what he's doing, and he wants Canadians to react appropriately. They want him to, to touch into their nationalistic spirit, say, oh, we can't let somebody from the South push us around, the big old bully USA, so we're going to stand up to this Trump character, without realizing that they're basically shooting themselves in the foot. The thing is that he wins either way. It's one of those things where you calculate what you're going to do and you win no matter what happens. The thing is that should the Liberal Party win in Canada, and I'm of course speculating. I'm not a political pundit, believe me, but I do follow what's going on, and I have my own ideas. Whether you can take them with a grain of salt or not, it's just merely my opinion. Is that if the Liberal Party wins, then Canadians get more of the same thing that they were getting tired of. And then with the tariffs and everything else that Trump plans on doing, should, the Liberal Party want to play hardball, yeah, he's going to play hardball too. In fact, he plays for keeps, you know. The thing is that by the numbers, Canada needs the U.S. There's no other market big enough to support all their programs, all the things they got to do. Plus, what happens if the United States says, "Hey, you're not going to defend yourself. You defend yourself. You pay for your own military. We're not going to do it anymore." How's that going to affect Canadians? Why do you think he's so interested in Greenland? If he doesn't get Canada, he'll just get Greenland. Either way, Trump's going to get what he's going to get. So, but let's just say that the Conservatives win. Well, then that's fine too for Trump. That means he can just go ahead. Maybe he can work with them to bring down the tariffs or whatever. Maybe they're more willing to work with it. I don't know. I don't know what Canadians' mindset is. And there's already, talk now. People always say poo-poo, like, oh yeah, Canada will never become part of the U.S. Well, there's a lot of people who thought things would never change too. No one thought the Roman Empire would fall. No one thought that, China would be, in a civil war and become communist. No one thought this. That, the thing is, never say never. Just because you don't think or you believe it's going to happen doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You just have to understand that things can spiral out of control that's beyond things that you could ever comprehend. You can believe that, this, that, or the other, but the fact of the matter is, when reality hits, just what? Last year, people thought, no way Trump was ever going to win presidency, and here he is. The thing is, you have to understand that there are things that that you believe, and there are things that are. What you believe is going to be different the way things are. There's reality and then there's fantasy. People want to believe in fantasy, but sometimes, and most of the time, they're hit with hard reality. People still need to pay their bills. They need a place to live. They need to eat. They need to sleep. That is just the harsh fact of reality. So, I like to think that we can all get along, but when it comes to certain things, you have to understand. You have to stop and think. For a minute. Stop and think for a minute why someone does something. You shouldn't just automatically react because you want to react. Stop and think, well, why are they doing this? What's the reasoning? There's always a reason. And if you can figure out the reason, then you could take appropriate action. But if you're going to fly off the handle and just become emotional, then you're going to make mistakes. And that's when your opponent is going to strike. And when you're the most vulnerable is when you're making a mistake and you're not thinking clearly. So anyway, that's just my take on what's going on between Trump and Canada. And take it for what you will. I could be totally wrong. Who knows? But until next time, this has been Done signing off.